The shepherds dawn you, wake in darkness, but it isn't the deep, complete darkness of midnight. There's a quality to the air, a subtle shift in the silence, that tells you dawn is creeping closer, still hidden beyond the eastern hills, but approaching nonetheless. Your eyes open to the familiar shapes of your small stone cottage, the low ceiling beams you know so well you could trace their knots and whorls from memory. The faint ember glow from the hearth where last night's fire has burned down to almost nothing. The rough wool blanket pulled up to your chin against the pre-dawn chill of an English spring morning in the year of our Lord 1350. But before you move, before you even fully emerge from the warm cocoon of half-sleep, you're aware of another presence. You feel the steady rhythm of breathing that isn't your own, the warmth of a body pressed against the side of your straw mattress. Your dog, your faithful, constant companion, lies on the floor beside your bed, so close that you can feel the rise and fall of his ribs, hear the soft whistle of air through his nose. In sleep, he twitches slightly, paws moving in some dream of running, chasing, working. You wonder, as you have 100 times before, what he dreams of. The flock, perhaps, the open hillsides, the wolf he once faced down to protect the lambs. You don't move yet. For just a moment, you lie still in this threshold space between sleep and waking, savoring the quiet, the warmth, the simple comfort of not being alone. In a world where so much is uncertain, where harvests fail, where sickness sweeps through villages without warning, where the great lords fight their distant wars and common folk, like you, simply try to survive, this constancy means everything. This creature, this dog, asks for so little and gives so much: food, shelter, purpose. In return, he offers loyalty that never wavers, companionship that never judges, work that never falters. Outside, you hear the first bird begin its song. A thrush, you think, though in the darkness you can't be sure. Your dog's ear flicks at the sound, but he doesn't wake, not yet. He'll wake when you do, as he always does, as if some invisible thread connects your consciousness to his. You've never understood it, this uncanny awareness he has of you, but you've long since stopped questioning it. It simply is, like the sunrise, like the turning of seasons, like the pull you feel toward the hills when you've been too long indoors. You think about the day ahead. The sheep will need moving to the upper pasture, where the grass is greening nicely after the winter. There's a section of stone wall that needs mending. You noticed loose stones yesterday, and if you don't fix it soon, the sheep will find the gap, and you'll spend half a day gathering them back. There's wool to card in the evening by firelight, your hands working the tangles and burrs from the fleece while your dog lies at your feet. His presence, a warm weight against your leg. It's a simple life, the life of a shepherd. Not easy ever, easy, but simple. You own little, this cottage that belongs to the manor lord, though you've lived here all your life and your father before you. The small flock of 30 sheep, some yours, some kept for the Lord in exchange for grazing rights. Your few tools, your spinning wheel, your cooking pot, your dog. In the eyes of nobles passing through on their fine horses, you probably seem poor, perhaps pitiable. But lying here in the pre-dawn quiet, you don't feel poor. You feel rich in the ways that matter. Your dog stirs, lifting his head. His ears prick forward, alert now, listening to sounds you can't yet hear. This is how mornings always begin him, waking first to the world beyond the cottage walls. You waking to him. He turns his head to look at you, and even in the dimness you can see the gleam of his eyes, the alert intelligence there. His tail thumps once against the floor. Good morning. Time to rise. Work to be done. You reach down, your hand finding the familiar shape of his head, fingers scratching behind his ears in the way he loves. His tail thumps harder, and he makes a small sound, not quite a whine, not quite a groan, a sound of contentment, of greeting, of readiness. Your fingers trace the scar above his left eye, a reminder of the wolf, a mark of his courage. The fur there grows in a different direction now, a permanent record of the night he proved just how far his loyalty would go. Good morning, friend, you whisper, and his tail beats a rhythm of joy at your voice. He understands the tone, if not the words, understands that you're pleased to see him, that you're ready to begin the day together as you always do. In response, he stretches, front legs extended, back arched, jaws opening in a wide yawn that shows his teeth still strong, still white, though he's no longer a young dog. 3 years he's been with you. 3 years since you chose him from his mother's litter. The puppy who didn't tumble over his siblings for attention, but instead sat quietly watching you with those intelligent eyes, as if he was choosing you as much as you were choosing him. You swing your legs out of bed, feet finding the cold floor, and immediately your dog is up, shaking himself, ready. The day has begun. You move to the hearth, coax the embers back to life, add small sticks and then larger ones until flames catch and dance. The fire's light fills the cottage with warmth and wavering shadows. Your dog sits nearby, patient, watching you with that focused attention that never quite feels like being watched by an animal. It feels like being understood, like being known. You pull on your woolen tunic, still damp from yesterday's light rain. Tie your leather belt, slip your feet into worn boots. Your dog follows every movement, anticipating. He knows the routine as well as you do. Better, perhaps. When you reach for your shepherd's crook, he's already at the door, tail wagging slowly, deliberately, his whole body quivering with barely contained eagerness to be outside, to be working, to be doing what he was born to do. But you don't rush. There's bread from yesterday, hard but edible when soaked in water. You break off a piece for yourself, a smaller piece for your dog, and he takes it gently from your fingers, his teeth never touching your skin, a courtesy, a gentleness that speaks to the depth of his training, yes, but also to something more, respect, trust, love, perhaps. Though you're not sure if dogs feel love the way humans do. The priests say animals have no souls, that they're God's creatures placed on earth for man's use. But sitting here in the firelight, sharing your meager breakfast with this dog who would die for you without hesitation, you find it hard to believe there's nothing divine in him. Outside, the darkness is softening to gray. The world is waking. Your dog whines softly at the door, eager now, and you smile. All right, you say, and lift the latch. The door swings open onto a world wrapped in mist, the hills beyond your cottage rising like ghosts from the valley floor. The air smells of damp earth and growing things, of spring's promise. Your dog bounds out 3 paces, then stops, turns, waits for you. Always waiting, always watching to see where you'll go, what you'll do, how he can help. You step out into the morning, pulling the door shut behind you, and stand for a moment, breathing in the cool air, feeling the wet grass beneath your boots, listening to the waking sounds of the valley-distant sheep calling, another dog barking from a farm further down the valley, the rush of the stream that runs through your pasture, swollen with spring rains. Your dog presses against your leg, solid and warm and real, and you rest your hand on his head, feeling the strong bones beneath the fur, the steady patience in his stillness. This is your life. This partnership, forged in need and deepened through countless days of shared work, shared silence, shared understanding. One man and a dog, facing another day together in medieval England, where survival is never guaranteed, but companionship makes it bearable, where loyalty is measured not in words, but in presence, in protection, in the simple, profound gift of never being alone. If you've ever loved a dog, you know this feeling, that sense that you're understood in ways that transcend language, that you're valued not for what you achieve or who you are in the world's eyes, but simply because you exist. Leave a comment about your own loyal companion, the dog who made your world feel safer, warmer, more complete. A partnership forged in need. Your dog wasn't always yours, though it feels now as if he's been part of your life forever. 3 years ago, in the early summer, when the lambs were half-grown and the pastures thick with clover, your old sheepdog, a grizzled female named Bess, who'd worked beside your father before she worked beside you, gave birth to a litter of 5 puppies. You hadn't planned for it, hadn't intended to breed her, but the manor's gamekeeper's dog had gotten loose, and nature had taken its course. Your first reaction wasn't joy, but worry. 5 more mouths to feed when you could barely feed yourself. Training, purpose in those early weeks. The puppies were chaos incarnate, tumbling balls of fur and needle-sharp teeth, wrestling endlessly with each other, nursing from their patient mother who seemed exhausted by their constant demands. You watched them carefully, knowing you'd have to make decisions soon. The manor lord might take one for his own flocks. Other shepherds in the valley might need a working dog, but you couldn't keep all 5. You'd be lucky if you could keep one. There's a specific memory that lives in your mind with unusual clarity, painted in the golden light of a June afternoon. You were sitting outside the cottage, mending a leather strap on your crook, and the puppies were playing in the grass nearby. 4 of them were wrestling, pouncing, mock-fighting with the fierce intensity that puppies bring to everything. But one, the smallest male, with a white blaze down his chest and intelligent brown eyes, sat apart from the others, watching you, just watching. His head tilted slightly to one side, ears perked forward, his whole attention focused on you with an intensity that seemed far too serious for such a young creature. You remember setting down your work and looking back at him, really looking, and in that moment, something passed between you, a recognition, perhaps, or a choosing. You extended your hand, and he trotted over immediately, no hesitation, settling himself by your feet as if he'd always belonged there, as if he knew. The other puppies continued their games, oblivious, but this one stayed with you for the rest of that afternoon, his small, warm body pressed against your leg, occasionally looking up at you with those eyes that seemed to understand far more than a puppy should. That's when you knew this one was yours. Or rather, you were his. The other puppies found homes, over the following weeks. A shepherd from 2 valleys overtook 2 for his growing flock. The blacksmith's son, recently married and starting his own small holding, took another. The last went to the manor for the gamekeeper's use. But this one, you called him simply Dog at first. Having no particular talent for naming and seeing no need for anything fancy, this one stayed, and the real work began. Training a sheepdog isn't like training a nobleman's hunting hound, though you've heard tales of how those animals are taught. The nobles have time and leisure to spend months on elaborate training regimens, teaching their dogs to retrieve game without damaging it, to follow complex hand signals, to obey instantly even when every instinct screams to chase. Your needs were different, more fundamental. You needed a dog who could move sheep without scattering them, who could protect the flock from predators, who could work in all weather and all conditions, who could think independently when necessary but also obey without question when commanded. The training began when he was barely weaned. You took him with you everywhere, to the pastures, to the market town 3 miles distant, to the stream for water. He learned to follow, to stay close, to come when called. These basic things, taught through patience and repetition and the occasional sharp word when he strayed too far or showed too much interest in chasing the chickens that scratched in the dirt outside the cottage. Then came the real work, introducing him to the sheep, at first just letting him observe while Bess, his mother, worked. You remember his first encounter with the flock, how he'd rushed forward with puppy enthusiasm, wanting to play, and how an old Away had stamped her foot and stared him down, teaching him the first of many lessons about respecting these creatures he'd spent his life managing. He'd retreated, confused, and looked to you for guidance. That was good. That was exactly what you wanted. A dog who looked to his shepherd, who sought direction, who understood this was partnership, not independent action. Week by week, month by month, the training progressed. You taught him to circle the flock, first in one direction, then the other. You taught him to drop flat on command, to freeze in place while the sheep settled. You taught him the difference between moving the flock gently and driving them with urgency when danger threatened. You taught him to use his eyes, that intense stare that working dogs have, to control sheep through presence and will rather than force and noise. Some of it he learned from you. Some he learned from Bess, watching his mother work with the fluid grace of long experience. And Samand, this still amazes you. Some he simply knew. Instinct, breeding, something carried in his blood from generations of working dogs before him. The first time he naturally cut off Away, trying to break from the flock, moving to block her escape route without any command from you, you felt a surge of pride so strong it surprised you. This dog, barely a year old, was already reading the sheep's intentions, anticipating their movements, thinking like the shepherd he was born to be. But it wasn't all smooth progress. There were setbacks, frustrations, moments when you questioned whether he'd ever truly be reliable. The time he broke command to chase a rabbit, leaving the flock vulnerable. The morning he decided the sheep needed to run rather than walk, scattering them across the hillside in his enthusiasm. The day he refused to work at all, distracted by a female dog in the next valley. His instincts pulling him in directions that had nothing to do with sheep or duty. Each failure was a lesson. Each mistake became teaching. You learned patience you didn't know you possessed, learned to read his moods and energy, learned when to push and when to ease back. You learned that punishment rarely worked, but praise always did. His whole body would wag with joy when you told him he'd done well, his eyes bright with pleasure at your approval. You learned that he wanted to please you, genuinely wanted it, and that this desire was the foundation of everything. In medieval England, in this year of our Lord 1350, dogs like yours aren't pets in the way people in distant futures will understand that word. They're workers, tools, necessary for survival in a harsh world where there's no room for sentiment that doesn't serve a practical purpose. Or so the priests tell you. So conventional wisdom insists. A dog is property, valuable only for what it can do, worth keeping only as long as it earns its food, but sitting in the pasture during those training days, watching this young dog learn and grow and develop into something magnificent, you knew the truth was more complicated. Yes, he worked. Yes, he earned his keep. But somewhere in the long months of training, in the countless hours spent together, something else had grown alongside the practical partnership, affection, trust that went both ways. A relationship that felt less like master and tool and more like friendship, family. Your neighbors would laugh if you said such things aloud. Dogs are dogs, they'd say. Useful animals, nothing more. Don't go soft, letting yourself care too much for a creature that might die of illness or injury tomorrow, that might be killed by wolves, or stolen by raiders, or simply wander off one day, never to return. In a world where human children die in infancy more often than they survive to adulthood, where wives die in childbirth, and husbands die in their fields, and whole villages disappear to plague, caring deeply for a dog seems foolish, dangerous even, an invitation to heartbreak. But as your dog no longer a puppy now, but a young working dog in his prime lies beside you in the spring grass, watching the sheep with focused attention, occasionally glancing at you to check if you need anything from him, you can't help what you feel. This partnership, forged in need, has become something richer. He isn't just your tool. He's your companion in isolation, your partner in daily struggle, your connection to something beyond mere survival. And perhaps, you think, watching him work, that's always been true. Perhaps throughout history, despite what the powerful say about the proper relationship between humans and animals, ordinary people like you have always known this truth, that sometimes a dog is more than a dog. Sometimes a dog is what makes life bearable. Have you ever wondered how our ancestors saw their animals differently? Subscribe to explore more stories of historical human-animal bonds, the connections that shaped daily life in ways the history books rarely mention. The daily round the sun has fully risen now, burning off the morning mist, and you begin the daily round the routine that shapes your life, gives it rhythm and meaning, defines who you are in this small corner of medieval England. Your dog walks at your left side, not quite at heel, like a noble's trained hound, but close enough that you can feel his presence, his readiness. He knows where you're going before you fully commit to the direction. After 3 years together, he reads your intentions in the subtle shifts of your body, the turn of your head, the pace of your steps. The sheep are in the lower pasture, a field of about 5 acres, bordered by stone walls built generations ago. maintained through constant labor against the inevitable decay that claims all human works. As you approach, the flock raises heads from grazing, ears forward, eyes watching. They know you, know your dog, know this morning routine as well as you do. There's a hierarchy among sheep that outsiders rarely understand the lead away. A canny old matriarch with a notched ear from some long-ago injury who decides where the flock will go, when they'll move, whether they'll trust or flee. If you can move her, the others will follow. Your dog knows this too. He's learned which sheep lead, which follow, which troublemakers will try to break away at the first opportunity. He watches them with an intensity that's almost physical, his eyes locked on the flock, his body coiled and ready. But he doesn't move. Not yet. Not until you give the command. The quiet whistle that means go wide, circle left. Bring them to me gently. The whistle cuts through the morning air, and your dog explodes into motion, not wild or chaotic, but purposeful, controlled, beautiful in its efficiency. He runs wide around the flock, giving them space, not crowding them, using that ancient instinct that tells him exactly how much pressure to apply. The sheep begin to move, flowing together like water, the lead away, making the decision to cooperate rather than resist. Within minutes, the flock is moving toward the gate that leads to the upper pasture, your dog weaving back and forth behind them, keeping stragglers from falling behind, preventing any from breaking away. You watch him work and feel that familiar surge of admiration. This is what he was born to do, what every fiber of his being is designed for. In this moment, working the sheep across the dewy grass with the morning sun warming his back, he's completely alive, completely himself. His tail is up, not wagging, but curved in concentration. His ears are pricked forward. Every muscle is engaged, responsive, ready to adjust to the sheep's movements in an instant. The upper pasture is better this time of year. The grass is richer there. The slope catches more sun. The limestone soil drains well even after heavy rains. It's a longer walk, nearly a mile from the cottage, which means you'll make this journey twice today. Once in the morning to bring them up, once in the evening to bring them home. In summer, you might leave them up there for days at a time, camping in a rough shelter at the pasture's edge. But it's spring still, the weather unpredictable, and you prefer to have them closer at night when wolves are most active. The walk gives you time to observe, to notice things. That young away is limping slightly. You make a mental note to check her hoof this evening for stones or signs of foot rot. The ram is being more aggressive than usual, challenging other males in the flock. Normal for this season, but something to watch. 2 of the lambs from this spring's birthing are thriving, growing fat and healthy, while another seems smaller than its siblings. Nature's way, perhaps, or perhaps it needs supplemental feeding. Your dog notices these things too, in his own way. His attention follows yours, watching what you watch, alert to your concern. When you stop to examine the limping away more closely, he positions himself to keep the rest of the flock from wandering off, holding them in place with nothing more than his presence and his steady gaze. When you're satisfied and ready to move on, he resumes his position. Reading your intention before you speak it. This is the language between you, not words, though you use those too, but something deeper. A shared understanding built through countless hours of working together, of facing challenges together, of learning to trust each other's judgment. He knows your moods, knows when you're worried or relaxed, knows the difference between move them quickly, danger is near, and take your time. All is well. You know his signals just as clearly, the different pitches of his bark that mean sheep are straying, versus stranger approaching, versus possible predator. The position of his ears that tells you if he's confident or uncertain. The tension in his body that says he's seen something you haven't, heard something beyond your human range. The journey to the upper pasture takes perhaps half an hour at the flock's patient pace. You're in no hurry. This is your work, your life, and rushing serves no purpose. The sheep graze as they walk, snatching mouthfuls of grass, pausing to investigate particularly tasty patches. Your dog allows this, understanding that hungry sheep are stressed sheep, that the goal is to move them steadily but calmly. Only when one away decides to be stubborn, planting herself to graze despite the flock moving on, does he intervene. A quick dash forward, a lowered head, that intense stare, and she trotting to catch up with her companions. The upper pasture finally opens before you, a sweep of green rising toward the rocky outcrop that marks the edge of your grazing rights. Beyond that belongs to the next manor, the next lord, and crossing that boundary without permission could mean punishment, fines you can't afford, or worse. But on this side, the grass is yours to use, and it's rich and thick and exactly what the flock needs. Your dog brings them through the gate, preventing the rush that could injure lambs or damage the gate itself, and you swing it shut behind the last away, securing it with a loop of rope. The sheep immediately spread out, grazing, the tension of the journey melting away. Your dog sits beside you, panting slightly from the exertion, his tongue lolling, his eyes still tracking the flock's movements. You reach down and scratch behind his ears, and he leans into your touch, accepting the praise he's earned. Good dog, you murmur, and his tail thumps against the ground. Such simple words, but they mean everything to him. You're pleased. He's done well. The work is successful. In his world, this is all that matters. You spend the next hour walking the boundaries of the pasture, checking the stone walls for gaps, looking for signs of predators, wolf scat, fox tracks, the telltale disturbance that means something has been testing the defenses. Your dog ranges ahead of you, investigating scents you can't detect, reading the stories written in smell and trace that are invisible to human senses. Twice, he alerts you to things you'd have missed: a section of wall where stones have shifted, creating a gap a determined sheep might squeeze through, and a rabbit warren that's expanding dangerously close to the wall's foundation, threatening to undermine it. These are the practical realities of pastoral life in 1350. Nothing is automatic. Nothing is guaranteed. The walls that keep your sheep safe require constant maintenance. The predators that would kill them are always probing for weakness. The land itself is in constant fluxy erosion. Animal burrows, frost heave in winter, all working to undo human efforts at order and control. Without vigilance, without this daily round of observation and repair, everything would fall apart in a season. But you're not alone in this vigilance. Your dog is a second set of eyes, a second intelligence, working in parallel with yours, catching what you miss, alerting you to dangers before they become catastrophes. This partnership multiplies your effectiveness, makes possible what would be impossible alone. One human couldn't watch 30 sheep effectively, couldn't guard them and check boundaries and notice every small problem before it becomes large. But one human and one dog, that's a different equation entirely. The morning wears on. The sun climbs higher, warming the air, drawing up the scent of earth and grass and sheep. You find a comfortable spot on a sun-warmed boulder and sit, watching the flock graze, your dog lying at your feet. This is the other part of a shepherd's life: the waiting, the watching, the long hours of relative inactivity between moments of effort. Some might find it boring, might chafe at the stillness, the lack of excitement or variety. But you've never felt that way. There's a peace in this work, a rightness, the rhythm of the seasons, the cycle of birth and growth and death, the simple necessity of keeping these animals alive and healthy. It connects you to something ancient and enduring. Your father did this work, and his father before him, and probably back through generations. You've never heard stories about "you'll do it until you're too old, and then perhaps a son or daughter of yours will take it on, and the chain will continue unbroken." Your dog sighs contentedly, settling his head on his paws, his eyes still half open, still monitoring the flock even in rest. He's content too, you think. This is his purpose, his joy, his reason for being. Some dogs are meant for fighting, some for hunting, some for guarding estates and intimidating strangers. Your dog was meant for this: the open hillside, the smell of sheep, the partnership with a human who depends on him utterly. The language between species. As the afternoon sun begins its slow descent toward the western hills, you realize you've spent the better part of an hour simply watching your dog without really thinking about it. He's been lying in the grass about 20 feet from you, positioned so he can see both you and the flock with minimal head movement. Every few minutes, his eyes tracked from the sheep to you and back again, a constant loop of monitoring and assessment. Even in rest, he's working. Even in stillness, he's vigilant. But it's more than just vigilance. There's something in the quality of his attention that goes beyond mere trained behavior. When he looks at you, really looks at you, there's recognition in his eyes. Not the blank stare of a simple animal, not the mechanical response of a creature acting purely on instinct. There's intelligence there, awareness, something that feels uncomfortably close to understanding. The church teaches that animals have no souls, that they're fundamentally different from humans, created by God for human use and dominion. Reason and immortal spirit belong to mankind alone. Animals are lesser, simpler, incapable of true thought or moral choice. Yet watching your dog watch you, you find these teachings difficult to reconcile with what you observe. When you're saddened, there have been days of sadness in these 3 years. Days when the weight of isolation and hardship pressed down like a physical thing your dog knows. Not because you tell him, not because you do anything obviously different, but he knows. He'll come and press against your leg, or rest his head on your knee, or simply position himself closer than usual, his presence a wordless comfort. How does he know? What is he responding to, if not some recognition of your emotional state, some basic empathy that supposedly belongs only to humans? And the communication between you has grown so subtle, so nuanced, that sometimes you forget you're working with an animal at all. You have different whistles for different commands. The long, low note, that means lie down and wait. The sharp, quick triple note, that means come immediately. The rising tone that sends him circling left, the falling tone for circling right. But beyond these formal signals, there's so much more. A gesture of your hand can redirect him. A shift in your posture tells him to prepare for action. Sometimes, you swear, he responds to nothing more than your intention, moving to do what you need before you've consciously formed the command. He has his own language too, and you've become fluent in it through long observation. His bark has at least 6 distinct variations that you can identify. The sharp staccato bark, that means a sheep is straying and he needs help. The lower, more sustained bark that indicates a potential threat, human or animal approaching. The excited, almost playful bark he gives when he's found something interesting he thinks you should see. The frustrated bark when a sheep is being particularly stubborn. The warning growl, rare but unmistakable, that precedes defensive action. And the soft, almost conversational woof he gives sometimes when he's content, lying by the fire in the evening as if he's telling you about his day. His body speaks volumes to the position of his tail, high and curved when he's confident and in control of the situation, lower and more relaxed when he's at ease, tucked when he's uncertain or frightened, which is rare. His ears telegraph his focus and mood, pricked forward when alert and engaged, swiveled to track sounds, flattened when he's being submissive or when he's prepared to defend. His eyes, you've learned to read so much in his eyes. The soft, relaxed gaze of contentment. The intense, unwavering stare he uses to control the sheep. The worried look he gives you when he's uncertain about a command or situation. The bright, eager expression that means he's anticipating something good, work, food, praise. Sometimes you talk to him as if he were human, as if he could understand not just the tone, but the actual words. On the long walks to and from pasture, you find yourself explaining your thoughts, your worries, your plans for the seasons ahead. That north wall will need complete rebuilding before winter, you might say, and he'll look up at you, head tilted, as if considering the problem. The flocks to Smallwee need more use if we're going to survive the next bad year. And he'll woof softly, seeming to agree. You know it's foolish. You know he doesn't understand the content of your words. But the act of speaking them aloud, of having a listener who never judges, never argues, never dismisses your concerns, there's value in that. Even if the listener has 4 legs and a tail, and perhaps he understands more than you think. Not the words themselves, but the meaning behind them. Dogs have lived alongside humans for so long, thousands of years. If the old stories are truth, that perhaps they've learned to read us in ways we don't fully comprehend. Your dog certainly seems to understand the difference between important talk and idle chatter, between commands and conversation. He responds appropriately to each, attentive during work, relaxed during the rambling thoughts you voice while walking. There are moments, brief, strange, almost mystical moments, when the boundary between species seems to dissolve entirely. Times when you and your dog are so perfectly synchronized that you function as a single unit. During these moments, usually when working the flock through a difficult situation, you don't need to give commands. He anticipates your needs. You trust his judgment. The sheep flow where you need them to go through a choreography neither of you consciously directs. It simply happens naturally, the way a flock of birds wheels and turns in perfect unison, following no leader but moving as one organism. Medieval scholars might call this unnatural. This deep connection between human and beast, the natural order, they'd say, places humans above animals, separate. Dominion means control, not partnership. A dog should obey, not collaborate. It should be tool, not companion. Any suggestion that an animal might participate in something approaching friendship with a human blurs categories that God established at creation, risking the sin of elevating beasts to stations they weren't meant to occupy. But the scholars live in monasteries and universities, surrounded by books and other humans. They've never spent weeks alone on a hillside with only a dog for company, never depended on an animal's senses to warn them of danger, never felt the comfort of a warm body pressed against them during a cold night, when the wolves are howling in the distance and fear makes sleep impossible. They've never looked into a dog's eyes and seen trust so complete it humbles you, loyalty so absolute it shames human fickleness. You think about this sometimes, in the quiet hours. What is your dog to you, really? Property, as the law defines him. A tool, as economic necessity suggests. Or something else, something the official categories don't capture. He's certainly valuable in practical terms. A good working dog is worth as much as several sheep, maybe more. If he were injured or killed, the economic loss would be significant. You'd have to acquire and train another, losing months or years of productivity in the process. From this perspective, caring for him well makes perfect sense. It's an investment in your own survival. But that's not why you share your food with him when supplies are short, giving him portions you could eat yourself. That's not why you sat up with him through 2 nights last summer when he had a fever, bathing him with cool water, coaxing him to drink, praying to saints you weren't sure were listening. That's not why you feel genuine happiness when he's happy, real distress when he's hurt or frightened. These responses go beyond economic calculation, beyond the practical relationship between human and beast. Perhaps, you think, the truth is simpler than the scholars make it. Perhaps friendship doesn't require souls or reason or moral capacity in the theological sense. Perhaps it requires only mutual regard, trust, loyalty, and affection. By that measure, you and your dog are friends, regardless of what the learned men say about the capabilities of animals. He trusts you to feed him, shelter him, keep him safe, give his life purpose. You trust him to guard the flock, alert you to danger, work faithfully in all conditions, and stay by your side when staying is harder than leaving. It's a covenant between you, unspoken but binding. You've never broken faith with him. He's never broken faith with you. In a world where human promises are frequently worthless, where lords betray vassals and vassals desert lords, where marriages end in abandonment and friends prove false when times get hard, this simple, wordless commitment between human and dog stands as something rare and valuable. The sun is lower now, the shadows lengthening. Your dog rises, shakes himself, looks at you expectantly. Time to gather the flock and begin the journey home. He knows this without being told, some internal clock marking the rhythm of the day. You stand, stretching muscles stiff from sitting, and give the whistle that means bring them together. He's off immediately, circling wide, beginning the careful work of consolidating 30 scattered sheep into a cohesive group. You watch him work with the pride of a craftsman admiring fine work, but also with something warmer, softer, affection, yes, but also gratitude for the work he does, certainly, but more for what he is, the one constant in an uncertain life, the one relationship untainted by the complexities that complicate human bonds. He asks so little: food, shelter, purpose, and your approval. In return, he gives everything. If you need to rest your eyes, just listen now as the story continues. When hardship comes, it happens on a Tuesday in late autumn, when the leaves have mostly fallen and the air carries the sharp promise of winter. You've brought the flock to the upper pasture as usual, though you've been uneasy all morning. The sky has that heavy, yellowish quality that often precedes storms, and the sheep are restless, bunching together rather than spreading out to graze. Your dog senses it too. He's more alert than usual, his ears constantly swiveling, his nose testing the wind for information you can't access. You're examining the north wall, the section that's been worrying you for weeks, when your dog's bark cuts through the afternoon air. Not his usual working bark, but the sharp, urgent alarm that means danger. You turn, heart already racing, and see the flock scattering in panic. There, at the edge of the pasture, where the forest encroaches on the open grassland, a wolf emerges from the shadows. It's a big male. You see in the split second before everything erupts into chaos, lean and desperate looking, probably driven to daytime hunting by hunger, by the scarcity that comes when winter approaches and wild game becomes scarce. His eyes fix on a lamb at the edge of the flock, the small, vulnerable target that predators always identify first. He's already in motion, closing the distance with terrifying speed. But your dog is faster. He launches himself across the pasture, a blur of muscle and determination, positioning his body between the wolf and the lamb. The collision, when it comes, sounds like thunder to bodies meeting at full force, teeth snapping, growls that raise every hair on your body. You're running too, your shepherd's crook raised like a weapon, though you know it's inadequate against a wolf, shouting wordlessly, trying to add your presence to the defense. The fight is savage and brief. Your dog fights with a ferocity you've never seen in him before. All training and gentleness stripped away, replaced by primal protective instinct. The wolf is larger, but your dog has the advantage of defending rather than attacking, and the certainty of purpose. The lamb belongs to his flock. The flock belongs to his human. No wolf will take what is his to protect. You arrive in time to see the wolf break away, bleeding from several wounds, your dog's teeth having found their mark. For a moment, the predator considers renewing the attack. You can see the calculation in its yellow eyes, weighing hunger against injury. But your dog stands firm, bloodied but unbowed, and you're there now, too, human and dog united. And the wolf makes its choice. It turns and melts back into the forest, leaving you trembling with aftermath. Your dog standing in defensive posture, watching until the threat has completely disappeared. Only then do you see the blood. Your dog's blood, welling from a gash above his left eye, where the wolf's claws caught him. Another wound on his shoulder, smaller bites and scratches across his muzzle and chest. He turns to look at you, and the protective fury drains from his expression, replaced by something quieter, pain, perhaps, though he shows it less than any human would. Or maybe just confirmation that the flock is safe, the danger past, his duty fulfilled. Your hands shake as you examine him, trying to assess how badly he's hurt. The cut above his eye is deep, bleeding freely, the kind of wound that in a human would certainly need stitching. The shoulder wound is concerning to you, can't tell how deep it goes, whether it's just torn skin or if there's damage to the muscle beneath. He stands still for your inspection, trusting you despite the pain your probing must cause, only flinching slightly when you touch the worst of it. The walk back to the cottage is one of the longest of your life. You gather the flock quickly, driven by urgency, your dog working despite his injuries, because the work still needs doing. But you can see the stiffness in his movements, the way he favors his injured shoulder, the blood that continues to seep from the wound above his eye. Fear sits like a stone in your stomach. You've seen animals die from infected wounds, seen them sicken and fail despite all efforts to save them. Your old dog Bess died that way, from a small cut that turned poisonous, taking her from health to death in less than a week. Back at the cottage, you settle the flock in the home pasture and turn your full attention to your injured dog. You have so little to work with, no trained physician or animal healer, no medicines beyond the herbs that grow wild or that you cultivate in your small garden. You have knowledge passed down from your father, from other shepherds, from trial and error over years. You have yarrow for bleeding, comfrey for wounds, honey that sometimes prevents infection. You have clean water from the stream, boiled to purity. You have your hands and your will and your desperate hope that it will be enough. He lies still while you work, cleaning the wounds with boiled water, applying yarrow paste to the bleeding, wrapping the worst of it with strips of clean cloth torn from an old shirt. The wound above his eye is too irregular to stitch, even if you had the skill, which you don't, so you do your best to hold it closed with the wrapping, praying it will heal straight. His eyes watch you throughout, patient and trusting, and you find yourself talking to him constantly, a stream of reassurance and apology and promise. You're so brave, you tell him, your voice breaking. So brave and so foolish. That wolf could have killed you, could still kill you if this goes bad. Your hands gentle on his head, careful of the wound. I need you to fight this. I need you to stay with me, please. He licks your hand, a gesture of affection that undoes you completely. You sit there on the floor of your cottage, your arms carefully around your wounded dog, and you cry for the fear, for the helplessness, for the unbearable thought of losing this companion who has become so central to your life that you can't imagine the days without him. The sheep are important. Yes, they're your livelihood, your survival. But this dog, this loyal friend who just risked his life to protect your flock, who would die for you without hesitation, losing him would be a different kind of poverty. One that has nothing to do with economics and everything to do with the heart. That night, you don't sleep. You sit beside him where he lies on the blanket by the fire, watching for signs of fever, for the sickness that so often follows wounds. You change his dressings when blood seeps through. You coax him to drink water mixed with healing herbs. You pray, though you're not sure to whom God, who supposedly doesn't concern himself with animals. Saint Francis, who loved all creatures, any power in the universe that might intervene to spare this one innocent life. The night is endless. Every hour that passes could be the beginning of the end. The infection taking hold, fever rising, the strong body beginning its descent toward death. You've seen it before. You know how these things can go. A creature can seem fine one moment and be failing the next. The poison spreading through blood faster than any cure can counter it. Your dog sleeps fitfully, whimpering sometimes in pain or dreams. Each whimper cuts through you. This is what love does, you think. It makes you vulnerable. It gives the world power to hurt you in ways that pure self-interest never would. If you thought of your dog as merely a tool, as property, as replaceable, this night would be easier. You'd care for him with the same practical attention you'd give any valuable possession. But without this crushing weight of fear, this raw emotional investment in his survival. But you don't think of him that way. You never have. From the moment he chose you as a puppy, or you chose him, or whatever mysterious alchemy created the bond between you, he's been more than a tool. He's been companion, partner, friend, and now, possibly, he's been a hero throwing his body between danger and the flock without hesitation, acting on loyalty and protective instinct so pure it seems almost divine. As the first gray light of dawn begins to show through the cottage's small window, you check his wounds again. The bleeding has stopped. His skin feels warm but not burning with fever. His breathing is steady. When you touch his head, his tail thumps weakly against the flora. Good sign, surely. Evidence of spirit, of strength, of the will to survive. Stay with me, you whisper. Please stay. And he does. Through that day and the next, through the careful nursing and the anxious watching, through the slow process of healing that is never certain until it's complete. The wounds begin to close. The feared infection never materializes. Whatever gods or saints or simple luck governs these things has been merciful. But the fear stays with you, even as he improves. The knowledge of fragility, the understanding that this partnership you depend on could end at any moment through violence or sickness or simple accident. In medieval England in 1350, nothing is guaranteed. Security is an illusion. Everyone you love, human or animal, could be taken from you without warning. Have you ever nursed a beloved animal through illness, hoping against hope that your care would be enough? That helpless feeling, that desperate bargaining with fate, it's a human experience that transcends centuries, connecting us to every person who ever loved a creature and feared to lose it. Recovery and renewal, the healing, when it truly begins, happens slowly and then all at once. For the first week after the wolf attack, your dog is diminished, moving stiffly, sleeping more than usual, his appetite reduced. The wounds are clean, thank God, showing no signs of the infection you feared. But he's clearly in pain, clearly weakened by the trauma and blood loss. You keep him close, limiting his movement, not allowing him to work the flock, even though you can see the frustration in his eyes when you leave without him each morning. Hire the neighbor's soon a gangly boy of 14 who knows sheep tolerably well to help with the daily shepherding. While your dog recovers, it costs you precious coin you can't really afford. And the boy is competent but not skilled, requiring constant instruction where your dog needed none. The sheep sense the difference too, testing boundaries they wouldn't dare cross with your dog watching, forcing you to work harder to maintain control. Each difficult day reminds you just how much you depend on your dog, how much his partnership enables. But you don't resent the cost or the extra work. Each morning, when you check his wounds and find them knitting together cleanly, each time his appetite improves slightly, each incremental step toward recovery feels like a gift. You've been given a second chance with this companion you'd feared losing, and you don't take it for granted. The scar forms above his left eye, a pale line through his brown fur where the wolf's claw opened his flesh. It heals crooked, giving his face a slightly asymmetrical look, a permanent record of that terrifying afternoon. You trace it gently with your fingers during one of the many times you sit with him during his recovery, and he leans into your touch, patient as always, a badge of honor. You tell him, proof of your courage. He can't understand the words, but your tone conveys approval, affection, and his tail wags slowly in response. On the 10th day after the attack, you wake to find him standing by the door, tail wagging with more energy than you've seen since the injury. He wants to work, needs to work, perhaps, the way a bird needs to fly or a fish needs to swim. It's in his blood, his purpose, and enforced rest, however necessary for healing, has been a trial of spirit as much as body. You're cautious at first, allowing him to accompany you to the pasture, but not to work hard. But the moment the flock comes into view, something settles in him. His ears prick forward, his posture straightens. He looks up at you with such clear eagerness that you relent, giving the whistle that sends him to gather the scattered sheep. He's rusty, there's no denying it. His movements are less fluid than before, his turns wider and slower. He tires more quickly, panting heavily after exertions that wouldn't have winded him before. But he's working, doing what he was born to do, and you can see the joy in it, the sense of rightness restored. The sheep respond to him immediately, falling back into the familiar patterns of their relationship. The natural order reasserts itself. You watch him carefully throughout that day, ready to call him back if he shows signs of overexertion or if his wounds reopen. But he seems to understand his own limitations, working smartly rather than hard, conserving energy, choosing efficiency over flash. It's actually better than his work before. In some ways, more thoughtful, more strategic, as if the injury has taught him something about the value of care and patience. Over the following weeks, strength returns gradually. The stiffness in his shoulder eases. The wounds fade from angry red to pale pink to silvery white. His appetite returns fully, then voraciously, his body demanding fuel to rebuild what was damaged. You feed him extra portions when you can, sharing more of your own food, wanting to speed the recovery, to restore him to full health and strength. But something has changed between you that goes beyond the physical. The attack and its aftermath have deepened the bond, added layers to the relationship that weren't there before. You've always relied on him, but now you've seen the full extent of his loyalty, the lengths he'll go to protect what you both care for, and he, perhaps, has experienced your care in a new way, not just the daily provision of food and shelter and direction, but the intense, focused nursing that saved his life. You tended him through pain and vulnerability, and some awareness of that debt, or gift, or simply love, shows in the way he looks at you now. There's a softness in his eyes that wasn't there before, or that you didn't notice. A checking in he does, glancing at you more frequently as he works, as if to reassure himself of your continued presence. At night, he lies closer to you than he used to, sometimes resting his head on your foot as you sit by the fire, a contact that speaks of trust and affection and the comfort of proximity. You find yourself appreciating the ordinary moments differently now. The simple routine of morning his greeting, his breakfast, the walk to the pasture together feels more precious, less automatic. You'd taken it for granted, this daily companionship, the way one takes for granted the sunrise or the changing seasons. But you came so close to losing it, and that near loss has taught you to notice, to value, to be consciously grateful for what you have. It's a peculiar gift, hardship. It strips away complacency, forces attention to what matters. Before the wolf attack, your dog was essential to your life, but perhaps somewhat invisible in his constancy. Like air or water, absolutely necessary, but rarely consciously appreciated, except in absence. Now you see him, really see him, every day. Notice the grace in his movement, even when he's just walking across the cottage. Feel gratitude for his presence, even when he's simply lying by the fire. Recognize the miracle of his existence. This creature who chooses to spend his life in service to your shared purpose. The other shepherds notice the change too. When you encounter them at the market or passing on the hill paths. Your dog's been in the wars, one comments, noting the scar. You tell the story, the wolf, the fight, the injury, the recovery. They nod with understanding. These men who depend on their own dogs, just as you depend on yours. He's a brave one, they say, and you hear the respect in their voices. A dog who'll face down a wolf to protect the flock is valuable beyond measure, worth more than any number of sheep. But they don't quite understand, you think, what this has meant to you. They see the practical value, good working dog, preserved and investment protected. They don't see the nights you sat awake, the prayers you whispered, the relief that washed through you when his fever didn't rise, when his wounds stayed clean, when he took his first steps toward recovery. Or perhaps they do understand, but don't speak of it. Perhaps every shepherd has their own version of this story, their own moment of nearly losing a partner and discovering just how much that partnership means. Medieval life is hard. You've always known this. Death is common, loss expected, grief a familiar companion. The Church teaches acceptance, submission to God's will, recognition that all earthly attachments are temporary and should be held lightly, lest they interfere with spiritual devotion. Don't love the world too much, the priests say. Don't let your heart anchor to transient things. But sitting in your cottage as winter's first snow begins to fall, your dog recovered and sleeping peacefully by a warm fire, you can't regret the attachment. Yes, you'll lose him eventually to age, if not to accident, to the inevitable mortality that claims all living things. Yes, that loss will hurt, perhaps terribly. But the alternative living, without this connection, guarding your heart against affection, to spare yourself future pains, seems infinitely worse. A life protected from loss is a life diminished, a life half-lived. Your dog stirs in his sleep, makes a small sound, and you reach down to rest your hand on his back. His breathing is steady and strong, his body warm and vital beneath your palm. He's here. He's alive. He's yours, and you're his. And for this moment, at least, all is well. That's enough. That has to be enough. In a world of uncertainty, this present moment of peace and companionship is all anyone can truly claim. Tomorrow the wolves might return, or sickness, or any of the 1,000 other dangers that stalk medieval life. But tonight there's fire and safety and the quiet comfort of not being alone. Tonight you have this dog, this friend, this partner, who has proven his loyalty in blood and who has received your care in return. The gratitude you feel isn't just for his recovery, you realize. It's for the whole relationship, for the 3 years of partnership that led to this moment, for whatever strange alchemy of fate or choice brought you together that summer day when he was just a puppy watching you with serious eyes. It's gratitude for the ways that loving something human or animal makes you more than you would be alone. Even knowing that love makes you vulnerable. Outside, the snow falls steadily, beginning to cover the hills in white. Inside, warm and safe, you and your dog rest together. Tomorrow will bring its challenges. There's always work to be done, always threats to face, always the grind of survival in a harsh world. But for now, there's this recovery, renewal, the quiet miracle of healing, and the deepened bond between one man and one very brave dog. If this story resonates with you, consider sharing it with someone who loves dogs and history, someone who understands that the bonds we form with animals are as real and valuable as any human relationship. The seasons turn, winter settles over the valley with the patient inevitability of time itself. The hills turn white, the streams ice over at their edges, and the work of shepherding becomes harder, colder, more demanding. You and your dog face it together, as you have for 3 years now. Though he's no longer the young, inexperienced animal he once was, and you're learning to read the subtle signs of his maturation. His scar has healed completely, a permanent mark above his eye that catches the light differently than the surrounding fur. When other shepherds see it, they nod with recognition and respect the mark of a dog who has proven himself, who has faced real danger and prevailed. Your dog wears it unself-consciously, unaware of its significance, concerned only with the daily work that defines his existence. The winter routine is different from summer's ease. The sheep must be brought to shelter during the worst storms, fed from the hay you spent autumn harvesting and storing. The water sources freeze and must be broken open each morning, your hands going numb from the cold water as you clear ice so the flock can drink. Your dog works in conditions that would defeat a lesser animal driving snow. Bitter wind, freezing rain that turns his coat into a mass of icicles. He never complains, never hesitates, simply does what needs doing with the same steady reliability he brings to every task. You watch him more carefully now, conscious of what you nearly lost, alert to signs of strain or injury. When his paws cracked from the cold and ice, you treat them with rendered fat. When he shivers after hours in wet weather, you dry him by the fire, rubbing warmth back into his coat. He accepts this care as his due, leaning into your ministrations, trusting that you'll tend to his needs as he tends to yours. Winter passes into spring with the gradual acceleration that marks seasonal change. The lambing begins, always the most critical time of year, when your entire livelihood depends on as many healthy lambs being born as possible. Your dog's role shifts during these weeks, becoming gentler, more careful. He seems to understand the fragility of newborn lambs, moving among them with a delicacy that contrasts sharply with the fierce protector who fought the wolf. You watch him watching a Awe give birth, his body tense with attention but motionless, giving her the space she needs. When the lamb emerges and struggles to its feet on wobbly legs, your dog's tail wags slowly, a sign of satisfaction, of rightness. Another lamb safely born, another member of the flock to protect, his purpose expanding with each new life. The spring brings other changes too. Bess, your old dog, who had been your companion before her son took over her duties, dies peacefully in her sleep one mild April night. She was ancient in dog years, perhaps 12 or 13, and her death isn't unexpected, but it still marks a passing, an ending. You bury her on the hillside, overlooking the pasture she worked for most of her life, and your dog sits beside you during the burial, quiet and still. Does he understand death? Does he mourn his mother in some canine way? You can't know, but his subdued behavior suggests some awareness of loss. That summer, you make a decision. Your dog is 4 years old now, in his prime, and you have 2 young females in the flock that would make good breeding stock for working dogs. When one comes into season, you allow the mating, thinking ahead to the future. Your dog won't live forever. The death of Bess has reminded you of that uncomfortable truth. Better to have a pup or 2 in training, learning from their father while he's still strong and capable, ready to take over when age eventually slows him down. The puppies are born in July, a litter of 4 healthy pups that tumble and play and remind you of your dog at that age. He's remarkably patient with them, allowing their sharp puppy teeth to tug his ears, their clumsy paws to climb over him. You watch him teaching them, gentle but firm, showing them by example what it means to be a working dog. When they get too rough with the chickens, he corrects them with a low growl. When they show interest in the sheep, he demonstrates the proper distance, the respectful approach. Fatherhood, you think, suits him. You choose one to keep, a female with her father's intelligent eyes and steady temperament. The others find homes with shepherds who've heard of your dog's courage, who want offspring from proven working lines. The young female you name Star for the white mark on her chest, and she becomes your dog's apprentice, learning from him as he once learned from Bess, watching the 2 of them work together. The experienced male and the eager young female, you feel the continuity of it, the way knowledge passes from generation to generation, not through words but through demonstration, observation, instinct, and practice. Your dog is teaching Star everything he knows, just as Bess taught him. The chain continues, unbroken. Autumn comes again, the 4th since your dog joined you. The flock is larger now, thriving under the partnership you've built. There's even a small surplus enough wool sold at market to buy yourself a new cloak, to repair the cottage roof, to set aside a little against future hardship. Success, by the modest standards of a medieval shepherd. Survival and slight prosperity, where so many others struggle and fail. Your dog is beginning to show subtle signs of age, not old yet, but no longer quite as young as he was. There are a few gray hairs around his muzzle, so faint you'd miss them if you weren't looking. He recovers slightly slower from hard days of work, sleeping more deeply by the fire. His movements remain fluid and strong, but there's a barely perceptible care in how he rises from lying down, a hint of stiffness in cold mornings that eases as he warms up. You're aging too, you realize. You're perhaps 25 now, no longer the young shepherd who selected a puppy 4 years ago. Your hands are rougher, more scarred from work. Your back sometimes aches after long days on the hills. The thin lines at the corners of your eyes from squinting in bright sun are becoming permanent features. This is life, the slow, steady passage of time that transforms everyone and everything, reshaping bodies and relationships and circumstances in incremental ways that are only visible when you stop to compare then and now. But some things don't change. The work continues, season after season, the same tasks repeated in endless variation. Moving the flock to pasture, protecting them from predators, tending to injuries and illness, shearing in spring, lambing, training young dogs, mending walls, surviving winters. The rhythm of it is comforting in its predictability, even when it's difficult. You know what to expect, know your role, know that you and your dog together can handle whatever challenges come. Star is developing well, showing promise of becoming as skilled as her father. She's still young, still making mistakes, but she learns quickly and has the right temperament, focused, biddable, brave when necessary. In a year or two, she'll be a full working dog, capable of handling the flock on her own. Between her and your original dog, you'll have twice the capability, able to expand the flock further, perhaps take on grazing contracts from other farmers, improve your circumstances. The future stretches ahead with possibilities you wouldn't have dared imagine. 4 years ago, when you were struggling alone with an aging dog and a small flock barely sufficient for survival, the partnership with your dog has made all the difference. His work multiplying your effectiveness, his presence easing the isolation, his loyalty proving that you're worth something, even in a world that often treats common folk as barely more valuable than the animals they tend. As the year turns once more toward winter, you sit by the fire one evening with both dogs, the experienced male lying at your feet, the young female curled nearby, already half asleep. Tomorrow will bring another day of work, another turning of the familiar wheel, but tonight there's peace, warmth, companionship, the simple contentment of a life lived in partnership with animals who ask so little and give so much. Outside, the first snow of the new winter begins to fall, soft and silent. Inside, you rest your hand on your dog's head, feel the warmth of his fur, the solid reality of his presence. 4 years together, many more to come, you hope, though you've learned not to take tomorrow for granted. For now, for this moment, you have this home, safety, warmth, and the quiet comfort of not being alone. The seasons turn, life continues, and through it all, the bond between one man and one faithful dog remains constant, a point of light in the darkness, a source of strength in hardship, a reminder that even in the harshest times and the hardest lives, love simple, wordless, absolute makes everything bearable. Twilight Reflections. 7 years have passed since that summer day when you chose a puppy from Bess's litter, or perhaps when he chose you. 7 years that feel simultaneously like a lifetime and like yesterday. The way time always moves when marked by deep relationship rather than mere chronology. Your dog is no longer young at 7. He's approaching the age Bess was when she retired from active work, though he shows no signs of wanting to slow down, despite the gray that now liberally sprinkles his muzzle. and the white that has crept around his eyes. The scar above his eye has faded to a pale line, barely visible except in certain light, but it remains a marker of the day that defined him, the moment when his courage was tested and proven. You still touch it sometimes, running your fingers along the ridge of it, remembering the terror of that afternoon and the anxious nights that followed. He's survived so much: the wolf attack, 3 brutal winters, a bout of illness 2 summers ago that had you fearing the worst until he rallied. Each survival has felt like borrowed time, a gift you didn't deserve but received anyway. Star is fully grown now, a skilled working dog in her own right, and between the two of them, you manage a flock of 50 sheep, a prosperity your younger self wouldn't have believed possible. The work is easier with 2 dogs, but you notice your original dog stepping back more often, allowing his daughter to take the lead on routine tasks, while he conserves his energy for moments that require experience and judgment. He's teaching her still, showing her the subtle things that can't be learned quickly: how to read a sheep's intention before it acts, when to press and when to ease back, which battles are worth fighting and which to let go. You're older too, of course, 32 now, though you've long since lost track of your exact age in a world where birthdays aren't celebrated and calendars are the province of priests and nobles. Your body carries the accumulated wear of shepherding life, a limp from a badly set ankle broken in a fall 3 years ago, hands gnarled from constant exposure to cold and wet, a persistent ache in your lower back that worsens in damp weather. These are the costs of the life you've chosen, or that chose you. You accept them without complaint, the way you accept rain and wind and all the other conditions that can't be changed. It's a spring evening, the light fading toward dusk, and you're sitting on the stone wall at the edge of the home pasture, watching the sheep settle for the night. Your dog, you still think of him as your dog, though Star is equally yours, nowless beside you, his head resting on his paws, his eyes half closed but still tracking the flock's movements. Even in rest, he's watchful. Even in his advancing age, he's devoted to the work that defines him. You think about the years you've shared, the countless days that have blurred together into a single long memory of partnership and purpose. How many times have you walked these hills together? How many sheep has he moved? How many predators has he faced or deterred by his presence? How many storms have you weathered side by side? The numbers would be impossible to calculate, but they add up to a life, his life and yours, intertwined so completely that you barely remember what it was like before him. There have been hard times, certainly. The winter, when food was so scarce, you were both half-starved by spring, surviving on roots and whatever game you could trap, and the last reserves of grain stored from better years. The summer of the great sickness that swept through the valley, killing humans and animals alike. When you isolated yourself on the high pastures for 3 months, terrified that the plague would find you despite the distance. The countless small crises of agricultural life, lambs born dead, sheep lost to accidents or theft, equipment broken at critical moments, whether that destroyed crops or flooded pastures. Through all of it, your dog was there. Not solving the problems, he's a dog. Not a miracle worker, but providing the steady companionship that made the problems bearable. Someone to talk to during the lonely vigils. Someone whose needs gave you reason to keep going when your own needs seemed insufficient motivation. Someone whose uncomplicated loyalty reminded you that you mattered, that your life had value, even when the world seemed determined to convince you otherwise. You've wondered sometimes what the nobles in their castles, the merchants in their counting houses, the priests in their monasteries would make of this relationship. They have their own hierarchies, their networks of obligation and alliance, their complex social structures that govern human interaction. Your life is simpler, smaller, but in some ways richer for its simplicity. Your dog asks nothing of you except food and purpose, gives you everything he has without calculation or reservation. There's a purity in that, an honesty that human relationships often lack. Not that human relationships are bad. You've known kindness from neighbors, shared meals and labor and conversation with other shepherds, even felt the stirrings of affection for the widow in the village who sometimes sells you bread and sometimes looks at you with warmth that might mean possibility. But humans are complicated, burdened with needs and expectations and the capacity for deception and disappointment. Your dog is uncomplicated. What you see is what you get, and what you get is loyalty without limit. He stirs beside you now, lifting his head to look at you with eyes that are beginning to cloud slightly with age. In a few years, he'll likely have the vision problems that come to old dogs, the world becoming blurry and indistinct, forcing him to rely more on scent and hearing. Eventually, if he lives long enough, he'll be like Bess was at the end, mostly blind, moving slowly, content to lie by the fire while younger dogs do the work. You'll care for him then as you cared for Bess, repaying the years of service with comfortable retirement, ensuring his last days are easy and warm. But that's future worry. Tonight, he's still here, still capable, still your partner, even if Star has taken over many of his former duties. His presence is what matters, the simple fact of his existence beside yours. The way his breathing synchronizes with yours when you sit together in quiet. Moments like this, the sun touches the western hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. The sheep are settled, content, safe behind stone walls, with two good dogs watching over them. In the cottage behind you, there's bread and cheese for your supper, a fire burning on the hearth, a comfortable bed of straw and blankets where you'll sleep tonight with both dogs nearby. Their warmth and presence, a comfort against the darkness. This is your life, not grand or remarkable by the standards of songs and stories. No one will remember your name in 100 years. Write chronicles of your deeds, build monuments to your existence. You're just a shepherd, a common man doing common work, living and dying in obscurity, like countless millions before you and countless millions yet to come, but sitting here in the fading light with your aging dog beside you, watching over the flock you've built together. You don't feel poor or insignificant. You feel rich in the ways that matter. You have purpose, partnership, peace. You have the satisfaction of work done well, of animals cared for, of life sustained against the odds. You have this dog, this friend, this constant companion who has shaped your days and your character and your understanding of what loyalty means. The medieval world is hard, you've never pretended otherwise. Life is short and often brutal, death always near, security always tentative. The powerful exploit the weak, disease strikes without warning, violence erupts unpredictably. You've lost people you cared about, endured privations that broke others, survived when survival seemed unlikely. The church promises better things in the next life, compensation for suffering in this one. But you've never been entirely convinced by their assurances. What you know for certain is this, right now. In this moment, you're alive and not alone. You have work that matters, a dog who depends on you and on whom you depend equally. A small piece of the world that you've managed to shape into something sustainable. Tomorrow may bring disaster, it often does, but tonight brings peace. And the accumulated nights of peace over 7 years add up to a life worth living. Your dog shifts, moving closer, and you drop your hand to his head, fingers automatically finding the familiar contours, scratching behind his ears the way he loves. His tail thumps against the stone wall, that simple gesture of contentment that never fails to warm you. After 7 years, you can read each other perfectly. He knows you're pleased, at peace, and his response is to share that peace, to add his contentment to yours, creating a small pocket of harmony in a discordant world. The stars are beginning to appear in the darkening sky, those distant lights that the ancients believed were windows into heaven. Though you've never quite understood the theology, they're beautiful regardless, cold and pure and constant, appearing night after night in their predictable patterns, indifferent to human struggle and suffering. Your dog doesn't look at the stars. His gaze is fixed on the flock, on you, on the immediate and tangible, rather than the distant and abstract. There's wisdom in that focus, you think. The here and now is all anyone truly has. Eventually, you'll rise and walk to the cottage, and both dogs will follow. And you'll share the evening meal and tend the fire and settle in for the night. Tomorrow, you'll wake and do it all again, the endless cycle of care and work that defines your existence. Epilogue. The legacy of loyalty. The cottage stands empty now, its stone walls slowly crumbling back into the earth from which they were built. The pastures have long since been absorbed into larger holdings, the stone walls maintained by different hands, the sheep descended from different bloodlines. Centuries have passed since that shepherd and his faithful dog walked these hills together. And the world has changed beyond recognition. The medieval order has given way to modernity, feudalism to capitalism, subsistence farming to industrial agriculture. But on quiet evenings, when the light falls golden across the English countryside, when shadows lengthen and the air fills with that peculiar stillness that precedes twilight, something of them remains. Not ghosts, not literal presences, but echoes. The echo of every shepherd who ever depended on a dog. The echo of every dog who ever gave its loyalty without reservation. The echo of a bond that has existed for thousands of years and exists still, connecting past to present in an unbroken chain of companionship. Walk these hills today and you'll still see shepherds with their dogs. Modern shepherds with trucks and veterinary care and subsidies from distant governments, but shepherds nonetheless. The dogs have changed somewhat, bred for specific traits, trained with methods refined by science and experience, but the fundamental relationship remains unchanged. A human and a dog working together, depending on each other, forming bonds that go deeper than mere utility. The shepherd from our story, let's imagine his name was Thomas. Though he never told us, And we never asked perhaps into his 50s, old by medieval standards. His dog lived to 11, remarkably old for a working animal in that era, and died peacefully one winter night, simply failing to wake from sleep. Star outlived her father by 3 years and produced several litters of her own, spreading his bloodline through the valley's working dogs. Perhaps some distant descendant of that brave dog who fought the wolf still works sheep in England today, carrying forward genetic memory of loyalty and courage. Thomas is buried in the churchyard of a village that itself no longer exists, his grave unmarked, his name unrecorded in any document that survived the centuries. He was nobody in the eyes of history, too poor, too common, too inconsequential for the chronicles that recorded the deeds of kings and nobles. His life produced no inventions, sparked no wars, changed no laws. By the measures that history traditionally uses to judge significance, Thomas barely existed at all. But he did exist. He woke each morning for 50-some years, felt joy and sorrow, knew fear and courage, loved and was loved in return. He worked hard, survived against odds, built a small life of meaning and purpose in circumstances that offered little of either. And for a significant portion of that life, he had a dog who made everything better, made everything possible, made survival feel sometimes like living rather than mere existence. That matters. It doesn't matter to historians, perhaps, or to the grand narrative of human civilization, but it matters in the way that all individual lives matter, completely and absolutely to the person living them, and to the small circle of beings whose lives intersect with theirs. Thomas's life mattered to his dog, certainly, whose entire world revolved around his human partner. It mattered to the sheep who survived because of their combined protection. It mattered to the few neighbors who knew him, who benefited from his reliability, his occasional help, his presence in the community. And now, across the vast distance of centuries, it matters to you, listening to this story, connecting across time with a shepherd you'll never meet and a dog whose bones are dust, because the story touches something universal, something that transcends the specifics of medieval England or subsistence farming or any particular historical moment. It touches the human need for companionship, the recognition that we're pack animals ourselves, made better by bonds that cross the boundaries we erect between species. Every culture that has domesticated dogs has stories like this one. Epic poems about faithful hounds, folk tales about dogs who saved their owners, legends of loyalty that outlasted death itself. The ancient Greeks told of Argos, who waited 20 years for Odysseus to return. The Japanese honor Hachiko, who waited every day at a train station for his deceased owner. Medieval Europe had countless saints' lives that featured miraculous dogs, protectors, and companions in holy quests. These stories persist because they speak to something real, something humans have always known. Dogs are different. The relationship between human and dog is special, unique among all the bonds between our species and others. Scientists now study this bond, measuring oxytocin responses when humans and dogs gaze at each other, mapping the neural pathways involved in cross-species attachment, documenting the health benefits that dogs provide their humans. They've confirmed what shepherds like Thomas always knew without needing proof. The bond is real. It's mutual. It's beneficial to both species, and it runs deeper than simple training or conditioned response. Dogs have been shaped by thousands of years of coevolution with humans, selected for traits that make them better partners: trainability, emotional sensitivity, willingness to bond across species, ability to read human gestures and expressions. But humans have been shaped too. Our societies structured in ways that make room for dogs. Our hearts opened to the possibility of loving something that doesn't share our DNA. Our lives enriched by the presence of creatures who give us purpose beyond ourselves. Thomas and his dog were part of this ancient story, one small iteration of a pattern repeated millions of times across human history. They're gone now, as all living things must eventually go, but the pattern continues. Tonight, somewhere in the world, a shepherd is settling down to sleep with a dog curled nearby, trusting each other with the simple totality that comes from years of partnership. Tomorrow, they'll wake and work together, facing whatever challenges come, stronger together than either could be alone. The cottage may be ruins, and the pastures may belong to different owners, and the specific sheep that Thomas tended may be 7 centuries dead, but the essential elements persist. Humans still keep sheep. Dogs still help them. The bond still forms, deepens, sustains. The story continues because it's not really about one man and one dog in one time and place. It's about all of us, all the ways we reach across the gulf of difference to find connection, all the bonds that make life bearable and sometimes beautiful. So let's honor Thomas and his brave dog, whose name we never learned. Let's honor Bess, who taught her son well before passing peacefully into death. Let's honor Star, who carried forward her father's legacy. Let's honor all the shepherds and their dogs across all the centuries, working in all the conditions humans have endured, from medieval England to modern New Zealand, from the hills of Wales to the mountains of Tibet. Everywhere that sheep have grazed and dogs have herded and humans have depended on 4-legged partners, their story is our story. Their bond is our heritage. When we look at our own dogs, our pets, our working animals, our service dogs, our companions, we're participating in something ancient and honorable, something that connects us to Thomas and to every other human who ever scratched a dog's ears and felt that surge of uncomplicated affection, whoever depended on an animal's senses and strength and loyalty, whoever knew the comfort of not being alone because a dog chose to stay. The twilight deepens into night. The hills of England sleep under stars that shone on Thomas and shine on us, constant and indifferent and beautiful. And somewhere in the darkness, in the space between history and legend, between fact and story, a shepherd and his dog walk together, still not as ghosts, as the eternal pattern of partnership that time cannot erase. Rest now. Let the story carry you into sleep, into dreams of hillsides and faithful companions, of simple lives lived well, of loyalty that asks no questions and expects no reward except the joy of being together. Rest knowing that the bonds we form with other beings, human and animal alike, the realest things we have, the legacies that matter most, the love that makes every individual life, however small, infinitely significant. Good night, dear listener. May your dreams be peaceful, your sleep deep, and may you wake tomorrow ready to love whatever companions, human or animal, share your journey through this brief, beautiful, difficult life. The story is finished. The shepherd and his dog have found their rest. And so, now, can you.
And so we come to the end of tonight's story. Thank you truly for spending this time with me. If you enjoyed this journey through history, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. Leave a like if this helped you relax, and share it with anyone who might need a peaceful night's rest. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What part of Genghis Khan's story stayed with you the most? What would you like to explore in future episodes? Your voice matters here. Now, let go of the day. Let go of everything that doesn't serve you in this moment. The step is quiet, the wind is soft, and sleep is waiting for you, gentle and warm. Good night, dear listener. Rest well, and I'll see you in the next story.